Hello everyone and welcome to a Green Lava Productions After Effects tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a very short repeating animation sequence, I guess is what they would call it, or a cycle. And as you can see here, I've got a bunch of birds on my screen here. And the way I created that is I basically created a bunch of frames of birds flapping their wings, and I'm basically just repeating it over and over again. And you can basically just cycle this as long as you want to. But anyway, I created it using Photoshop, and I imported the Photoshop layers into After Effects to create this illusion of birds flying across the screen. And you can do this with any kind of cycle you want to. It could be a walking cycle, it could be a mosquito flying across the screen, it could be a ball just bouncing, you know. It could be anything you want. But today I'm going to be showing you how to do the bird thing that I made here. So if you hop over to Photoshop, you can see that I've got a Photoshop document with a bunch of layers in it here. They're numbered 1 through 10, and these here, this is just background layers here. But on each layer there is a different frame of a bird flying. So we've got, you know, the wings are sort of coming down, and then they're going all the way down, and then they're coming back up again, and they're basically going back to the starting position. And I'm just looping this over and over again. If you go into my comp here that I loop, I've got each frame isolated. And as I play through it here, if I hit RAM preview, you can see that it creates the illusion of a bird flying. And I'm going to show you how to create that. So, the first thing that I would do for anybody who wants to, you know, doesn't know that much about animation or doesn't know a lot about drawing, is I would go online and I would look for a cycle. So the first thing I would do, if I were you, is I would go on an image search for a basic cycle, whatever cycle you're going to want to animate. And for me, I just typed in bird cycle. I think I typed in bird cycle. And you can see there's sort of different options here for birds flying. Let me type in bird flying cycle. Okay, and as you can see here, there's a bunch of birds flying. I think I used this one here. And it's got a Shutterstock watermark in it, but I don't care about that because I'm not going to actually use this. I'm going to just kind of trace over it for the purposes of this video. So I'm just going to right click here. Open image in new tab. Let's do that. There we go. It doesn't have to be good resolution because I'm going to trace over it. So take it, drag it off, throw it on my sort of desktop down here. There we go. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to import it into Photoshop like so. And you can see I've got a nice image here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the resolution of this Photoshop file. So I'm going to go to Image. Let's go to Image Size. Why not? And I'm going to change the resolution to 300 pixels per inch. And as you can see, as soon as I typed that in, it basically just increased everything, the width and the height. And I think that's going to be okay. And so this basically just scaled up this image, and we're not going to really use these particular images. We're just going to trace over it. So I don't really care how blurry it is or anything like that. And this is a lot easier if you're using a tablet, but you can do it with a mouse as well. But basically what I'm going to do is I created a new layer up here. I'm going to go into layer 0 and I'm going to decrease the opacity of it. And basically what I'm just going to start doing is I'm going to start just kind of tracing over each bird. And you can use any color you want to. I used sort of a purple color. Let's see, for the After Effects one here, for the reference one here, I used kind of a purple outline and then like a lighter purple in the middle here. I'll use a different color for the purposes of this video. I'll use, I suppose I could use sort of a red. Maybe this is kind of a cardinal or something. So I'll use a dark red for my outline, like that. And I'm going to go into my brushes and I'm going to make sure that I've got a solid brush selected. That looks good. Basically what I'm going to just do is zoom in here and I'm going to just start tracing over. And I think it's on grayscale right now. So image mode RGB color is what we're going to want to use. Don't merge. Yeah. So I'm just tracing over. If you know a lot about sort of like how nature moves, you know, like how human beings move or how animals move. If you've taken a lot of art classes, maybe you won't need this step, or maybe you could just pull this image up and then just sort of draw it from the image as a reference, but I just think it's a little bit faster to do it this way. I'm just going to keep going, and I'm probably going to time-lapse this part. Okay, so now I have all of my sort of outlines created here on my layer number 1. And I went ahead and Googled what a cardinal looks like. And I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to color it in sort of this same kind of style here, where you've got the red bird and you've got sort of this blackness on the face here. And it looks like the beak is red too. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color it. The way I'm going to do that is I'm here on layer 1. This is sort of where my stroke is going to be. Duplicate the stroke layer. And the way I'm going to do that is Command J or Control J on Windows probably. I'm not sure. Probably Control J on Windows. I haven't used the Windows in a long time, but so basically you're just going to have 2 copies of the same layer here. And I'm going to rename this one color. Make sure the color is right underneath where the stroke is. And what you could do is you could go with your fill bucket, and if you have closed paths all around, you could just fill it all the way, like so. This is a very lazy way to do it, and as you can see, it doesn't fill it completely, but we can fix that a little later using the brush. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fill everything, and as you can see here, there's an open path. The way I'm gonna fix that is I'm just gonna use my brush tool, and I'm just gonna close this together, and now I'm going to just color. Make sure you get every single part that's not filled in. There we go. Alright, and now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to, with my brush tool, just sort of just fix everything that was kind of left over. Okay. I'm pretty close right here, I think, with the filling, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to just fill it a couple more times and just sort of get the rest of these. You can see these sort of little outlines that were left here. If you click in here enough, it should fill the rest of those spots. See here, there's some I must have filled it too much because there's some red outside of the stroke. I'm going to leave that for now. Since it's going to be one frame, it's not going to be that noticeable. Keep in mind that all of these images are just going to be shown for one frame each. So mistakes are forgivable. They're very forgivable. This kind of animation. Animation is a very tedious thing, as anybody who's ever animated anything will tell you. Okay, I think that looks good. So that's just going to sort of be my my base, and I'm going to just sort of do a little more details. I'm going to create a new layer underneath here, underneath the color, and I'm going to create the tail. If I go back to my reference image here, you can see that the tail is red. It might be a little bit of a darker red than the rest of the bird. So I'm just going to go into here and I'm going to just make it a little redder. And I'm going to use my brush tool here. I'm going to increase the size of it just a bit. Like that, I think. There we go. And I'm just going to create a little tail underneath the rest of the bird. Again, make sure you're underneath everything, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you paint. Like, you can paint behind it. It's not going to show up because the layer's underneath it. And I'm going to merge all these layers anyway. This is an easy way to color stuff, I think. These tails don't have to be perfect. I'm just drawing some feathers under here. Okay, I think that looks good. I'm going to draw the legs, and I'm going to do the legs the same way as I did the tail. I'm going to use the same color as the stroke here. And I'm going to just sort of take my brush and just sort of draw some legs underneath. Doesn't have to be perfect. Some of these frames I can just leave alone because the wings are going to theoretically be over the legs, or the front wing is going to be over the legs. So. Alright, there we go. Okay, that looks good. And now I'm going to finish it by doing the face. And the face, as you can see here, there's a black eye, and then there's some blackness around the face, and the beak itself is red. So I probably can leave the beak the same color it is now. But I'm going to probably go on a new layer here, and I want to make sure that I'm painting only in where the red is. So if I drift out this way, it's not going to go outside of wherever the bird is. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to, on my color layer here, I'm going to hit Command, and I'm going to click it. And as you can see, it selects only what's on that particular layer. So if I were to go in and go to black and just start painting, and I'm painting outside of the bird here, it's not going to drift outside of where the bird is. So I really like that feature of Photoshop. So it kind of looks like it looks kind of like a backwards 7 a little bit. So let's just sort of match that. On this bird. You don't have to get perfect. If you want to have a more complicated image, you definitely can. But this is just a very, very quick, very rushed tutorial here. Boom. Okay. I think that looks good. And now I'm going to finish it by drawing an eye. Oh, that's a really small eye. Increase my brush size a little bit here. There we go. The pressure sensitivity on my stylus is kind of messing me up a little bit, but that's okay. Oh. Cool. It almost seems like these beaks are a little bit too big in some of these frames. It's probably okay. Okay. Anything else I should add? Let's see. It almost looks like there's a little bit of a little feather coming out of the head here. Maybe I should add that, just to be on the safe side. The way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to deselect my color, make a new layer above stroke. All right, and so I've got a bunch of cardinals here. And now comes the fun part. Now comes the part where I animate everything. And so I'm going to turn this layer 0 off. That was my guide layer. And I've got all these little cardinals here that I'm going to use. And since like all these colors on it are on different layers right now, in order to actually get all of the artwork together, I'm going to have to merge everything. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything here that's not layer 0, because remember layer 0 is the background layer. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click merge layers. And as you can see, if I turn this on and off, each everything is flattened and it's all on one layer, and that's what I want to do. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate each bird on its own layer. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go into my rectangular marquee tool, and where it says layer 3 here, I'm going to just select one bird and I'm going to hit Command J, and that just knocked it up to another layer here. So as you can see, if I turn this on and off, you can see that this is on its own layer. It preserved the bird that was originally there on layer 3, but it also made a copy of it on layer 4. So I'm going to do that for each bird here. I'm just going to select it. I'm going to make sure I'm on layer 3 as I'm doing it, and Command J, knock it up to a new layer, and just keep doing it for each bird here. Command J, Command J. There's a lot of just repetition involved in this, but Command J. Command J. Command J. Make sure you're not selecting any other birds too as you're selecting this on layer 3, because you don't want to, put something that shouldn't be there on a certain layer, if you know what I mean. All right. So if I turn this layer 3 off, there shouldn't be any difference, but as soon as I turn off any other layer, you can see that each bird is on its own new layer, and that's what I want to do. Cool. And the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to number each bird according to whatever frame they're going to be. So this one over here is going to be layer 1, or bird 1, or just 1, I guess, and then 2, 3, 4, whatever. And so I'm going to start all the way up here, and I'm going to call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's just going to help me lay out everything better in After Effects, I think. Okay, so I'm done in Photoshop, I believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to File, Save As, and I'm going to call it bird.psd. Make sure it's a Photoshop document, make sure layers are turned on, and I'm going to hit Save. Hit OK, and I'm going to head over back into After Effects. Alright, so now I'm in After Effects, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import my Photoshop document into my project panel. So I'm going to double click into here, and I'm going to just make sure you navigate right to where your project is saved, and go ahead and click on it and open. Make sure you open it as a composition, retain layer sizes. And I'm not sure this makes much of a difference for these purposes, but just for the sake of faster rendering, I'm probably just going to click on Merge Layer Styles into Footage. Go ahead and hit OK, and the first thing you can see is you've got a composition here, and you've got a bunch of layers preserved in a folder underneath. And if I click on this composition, you can see that I've basically got a copy of my Photoshop file where I've got all these birds laid out together, and I've got all these layers underneath here. And it preserved my layer names that I made in Photoshop, 1 through 10, and that is good. And so basically I'm just going to take this composition and I'm going to use that for my animation. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each bird and I'm just going to move it into the center of the composition. And a good way to tell where the center is if you go into here where it says Grid and Guide Options and you go to Title, Action, Safe. You can see that there is sort of a nice crosshair in the middle here, and that's going to tell you where the middle of the composition is. So I'm going to take each bird and I'm just going to kind of move it into the middle and make sure that each bird is sort of in the same place. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think that's good. Each bird is kind of sort of in the same place. That's great. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that each frame that I have is, each frame in After Effects is one frame of this Photoshop layer. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to cut off each layer, I would say one frame, I think. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to the end of wherever I want my layer to be, and I'm on my keyboard I'm hitting Alt and either left bracket or right bracket. So I'm going to the end of the first frame, and I'm going to the next frame and I'm hitting right bracket, and that cuts it off here, and I'm hitting left bracket again, and that's going to basically start it at the end of this frame, if that makes any sense. Actually, this is layer 3, so this isn't going to really matter too much where I cut it, where I cut it at. Okay, and so I'm going to go out and I'm just going to move my render bar here. I'm just going to move it all the way to the end, and it's going to be 10 frames long because there's 10 frames that I drew in Photoshop here. And if I hit RAM Preview, I've got a very, very fast animation of a bird moving. And if you want it to be fast, by all means go with this. But for the purposes of this video, I think I'm just going to lengthen each frame to 2 frames, or each layer to 2 frames, rather than 1 frame. So then you see more of the actual layer. And I just want to make sure that each layer starts where the other one ends, so you don't see 2 underneath each other. So if 2 accidentally overlap, you can tell that there's some there's a mistake. So we want to make sure that it's very neat. Two frames. And it's going to lengthen everything, and it's going to end up being, rather than 10 frames, it's going to be 18 frames. And if we RAM Preview, I've got a very nice bird fly. Oh, missed one. So it's not going to be 18 frames, it's going to be 20 frames. I thought that was weird. Okay, so if we RAM Preview, you can see there's a nicer, sort of smoother, slower bird flying. Okay, and so this is just going to be your basic comp that your animation's going to live in. But what do you want to do if you want to loop it? Well, I will show you. The first thing that I would do is I would go to your composition settings, and I would change the duration of whatever comp you put your frame by frame into that particular length. And in this case, it's going to be 20 frames. So I'm just going to type in 20 in my duration, and that's going to change the length of the composition to 20 frames. And then if you go into a new composition here, and let's just make it a standard 1080 2997 composition, and you drag your bird pre-comp into it, and say you want to make a video that's, oh, I don't know, 10 seconds long, and I zoom all the way out. You have one cycle, but as soon as this runs out, you're left with a bunch of blank space. Well, what if you want to have a bird flying across the screen? Well, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to loop this. And basically by looping it, I mean you're going to have to make this comp so that it starts over as soon as it ends. Now, you could, if you wanted to, you could duplicate this, and you could just sort of move it so that as soon as one stops, the next one starts playing. But the problem with that is, as many times as you want to loop it, you're going to have to make a new layer, and that can get very cluttered on your comp. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an expression. And I believe it's called the loop expression. There may be another term for it, but I call it a loop expression. And it's a very easy expression to make. What you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to right-click on your pre-composition, and you're going to go to time and enable time remapping. And as you can see, you've got a couple of keyframes here for time remapping. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to apply your expression to this particular set of keyframes here. And if you're not familiar with expressions, basically in order to apply one, all you have to do is hit Alt on your keyboard and click on the stopwatch. And basically this is going to turn red, and you're going to be able to type whatever expression you want to in this little bar here. And the expression we're going to type is loop, L-O-O-P. Make sure the loop is completely undercase. And you're going to type out, capital O-U-T. And parenthesis in, parenthesis out. And you're going to click out of that. And basically what that does is you can take your composition and you can make it as long as you want. And if we ran preview, you can see that there's a nice looping effect. Now there's kind of an issue going on here. As you can see, it kind of screws up at one frame, and you can see that issue with one frame. The way you're going to fix that is you're going to zoom all the way in, and you're going to go to the last keyframe, and you're going to go one keyframe before that, or one frame before that, and you're going to make a new keyframe by clicking on this little dot here. And then you're going to go to the end keyframe, and you're going to delete that thing. And so once you've done that, just take that keyframe and move it to the right where the old keyframe used to be. And let's do a RAM preview. Oh, you saw it show up. It showed up briefly here, but then it goes away completely. So the way we're going to just get around that is we're just going to take this and move it all the way in so that it just covers up. And now if we ran preview, you've got a nice bird fly for as long as you want it. And so if you want to replicate where I had the bird flying across the screen, all you have to do is animate a position. So I'm going to start the position over here, and I'm going to end it, oh, I don't know, here, 6 seconds in. I'm just going to go, like so. And I'm going to run preview. You can tell that I've got a nice bird flying across the screen. And you can duplicate this as many times as you want to. You can just duplicate it like that. U to reveal all of your keyframes. And I'm going to move it down just a little bit. Scale it up just a little bit. You can tell that I've got 2 birds flying now. And if you want it to kind of give the illusion of it being another bird that isn't completely mirroring the other one, you can just move it a little bit. Move the layer a little bit to the right or the left. And now you've got 2 birds flying. Alright, and that is the end of the tutorial. I hope this helped you in some small way. If you liked the video, go ahead and like it, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.